Reporter Nathaniel Hurst has been all over this race, and he joins us now from Anchorage. He's also the author of an article appearing in the Washington Post Wednesday describing the significance of this win and the complicated voting process that got us there. Let's start with the complicated stuff, Nathaniel. Without getting too bogged down in the math, which is easy with ranked choice voting, give us a thumbnail of how this ranked choice voting played out in this particular election.
Yeah, I think complicated is a little bit of a loaded term. So personally, I would shy away from it here. I mean, I think ultimately this really was just a two-step process, right? So voters in this system were asked to rank candidates, but there were only 3 candidates in the general election. So really it was you rank your first choice candidate. And if your first choice candidate finishes last, then your second choice vote gets redistributed to the 2 remaining candidates. In this case, Mary Peltola was leading after the first round of voting. Nick Begich finished last. He was the second of 2 Republicans in the race. His votes were redistributed, and about half of them went to Sarah Palin, which was enough to get her close to Mary Peltola, but not close enough. And, you know, the big takeaway yesterday was that again, while half of Nick Begich's voters ranked Palin second, 30% ranked a Democrat second, which was really surprising because Nick Begich is a Republican, and then 20% didn't rank anyone at all. And so, you know, chose to not rank a second choice over ranking Palin. There's a lot of speculation about, you know, why that might be. Is it because a lot of Alaska voters, as polls have shown, have a negative view of Palin? Is it because Begich and Palin were attacking each other left and right on the campaign trail and kind of lowering the likelihood that their voters might vote for each other second? But, you know, in the end, that was the result. Mary Peltola pulls out a really close win.
Well, Peltola only wins this seat for a few months. Could we see the same matchup in the general election in November?
Yeah, not only we can, but we will. Those 3 candidates that were on this special election ballot, Nick Begich, Mary Peltola, Sarah Palin, they are on the general election ballot along with a libertarian candidate, Chris Buys. So basically, we're going to see a repeat of this in 2 months. And, you know, the big question now is what's going to be different between now and then? Our big national groups, which largely stayed out of this race, are they now going to jump in? Are the candidates going to campaign differently? Are people going to maybe embrace ranked choice voting a little more seriously now that they know what can happen when maybe they don't? And yeah, those are some of the big questions I think we'll be looking to see what happens over the next couple months.
Well, with this victory, she really makes history on 3 different fronts. I mean, as a woman, as a Native Alaskan, as a Democrat winning statewide in Alaska. What does that tell us about the political climate at this moment in Alaska?
You know, it's been about, I think, 20 hours since this happened. And I think a lot of people are trying to draw a lot of conclusions. I mean, I think certainly it is historic to have Alaska's first Indigenous member of Congress, although I would stress that Mary really did not run as the Alaska Native candidate. You know, she ran as a candidate really for rural Alaska, for some of the remote communities that, you know, don't have road access, may not have good broadband access, are seeing impacts from climate change and crashes in salmon returns. You know, I think, you know, also, again, you know, the seat was held by a Republican for almost 50 years in Don Young. But, you know, whether this is about kind of demographic or political shifts in Alaska, about kind of national trends, the Biden agenda, whatever, I think, you know, then there's the whole complicating factor of ranked choice voting. So I think it's too soon to really draw any kind of sweeping conclusion about what this means. But I think we know that all those strands were there as Alaskans were going to the ballot box last month.
Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton almost immediately called the election fraudulent. What are these critics basing the criticism on?
Look, I mean, people say it's confusing. There has been, you know, there have been sort of intimations that, you know, I think Tom Cotton said it's a scam. You know, I think in Alaska, largely so far, we have seen folks criticizing the system without doing the sort of Trump questioning the validity of the results. But I think, the main thing about the new election system here is that it eliminates the partisan primary. So no longer do Republican candidates all go up against each other in a primary and you get a single Republican in the general election. Now you can have two Republicans in a general election, and that actually might make it harder for a Republican to win because you have people splitting votes, and then voters may not rank a candidate second. So I think, there's a distinction here between is the system somehow, fraudulent or broken versus does it not get the outcome that you want? And the political scientists that I've talked to about this say, the election architecture and framework is ultimately just as much a part of our sort of political coalition political system. It's a thing you can change to advantage or disadvantage certain factions of voters. And so I think, whether even this system really does disadvantage Republicans, I think remains to be seen. This is a single election, a single data point. We're going to see the system used in dozens more legislative elections this fall. But, certainly there has been a lot of criticism, particularly by Republicans in Alaska, that this system is not needed, it's confusing, et cetera. And so, ultimately, this was a system that Alaska voters narrowly approved in 2020 in a ballot initiative. And, if the legislature wants to go ahead and get rid of it next year, or someone wants to do another initiative to get rid of it, that's always on the table. But, that's going to have to survive the will of the Alaska public to keep it. So we'll see.
Nathaniel Hers, good work covering this, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.